Hi everyone. I haven't been here for a very long time and I'm so sorry about that. I wish I could find the time to do everything. But for today's video, which is probably this year's video because it's been that long since I posted anything, is actually a re-edit of something I have on my Patreon. So it's a series of tutorials on making this salty mermaid. I'm going to put these videos out in parts, just as they are on my Patreon, but they're going to be a little bit speeded up. If you want to see the original, it's on my Patreon, and you can find this entire series for free. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you what my collections page looks like on Patreon. I've been there for over 5 years now, I think. So I have quite a huge library of tutorial videos. So let's start by sculpting the face. And for the way I sculpt, I always start with a skull. The skull is made myself. So I've sculpted a skull already. I've then taken a mold of it and I use the same mold every time. All of that I do show on my Patreon. This is going to sound like a big advert for Patreon. It is, but it isn't. I'm just really bad at promoting it. I haven't promoted it in years, and I know that I actually need to do that because sometimes when I look at what I have, I feel like there's so much I have and I don't know who knows that it's there. So that's my reason, and I apologize. It's not meant to be like one big advert. Reference pictures are very important. Full face, profile picture, very important. As close to a perfect profile as you can get. Some 3/4 views are also really quite useful. Depends. If you're not doing a portrait, it's not as important to have everything, but it is good to have. Even if I'm not doing a portrait, I always make sure that I have these very important reference pictures because they do help to shape any face. As you can see on what I'm doing now is I'm just building up the profile. I'm also taking measurements of the jawbone, so the width of the jawbone, the width of the cheekbones, and the width of around the temples, so that so once I've got all of that in, I've got a good idea of what the profile is going to look like and the width of the face in those areas especially, and then from there I can fill in the gaps between, say, the width of the cheekbones, width of the jaw. Between those you've got gaps obviously of clay then, and then you can fill those out, and that's where the 3/4 views come in very useful. So if you're doing a portrait, you're going to be much more careful about that particular shape of that face when it comes to all these angles. If you're not doing a portrait and you just want some loose ideas, then it's quite nice to choose faces from different angles of the features that you like, and you can just copy them and put them all into one face, and then obviously it's not a portrait at all, it's just your own creation, but you're still working from a level of reference, if that makes sense. That's how I work anyway. I actually find it very difficult not to work that way. I have done that in the past a few times and it's actually quite fun, and I probably should do a video like that soon. Just not having any reference, just for the fun of it. But in this case, I have used a reference. So it's really just building up. When I build up any part of the face, any part of the body, I take a piece of clay and I split it in half, and I try to put both sides on at the same time so that you don't end up with one side much more built up than the other. I used to always, when I first started doing this, I would build up one side first, so sculpt the one side first and then try and replicate it on the other side, and it's almost impossible to do, and also it's very much more time consuming. So the way that works really well, I find, is to do both sides at the same time. Especially at the beginning, building up the key points is quite important and quite helpful to build them up together symmetrically. So I'm just adding the 2 symmetrical pieces, same size, same shape-ish, for the jawbone after having measured it on my reference picture with my calipers. We're almost at the point where I will add the eyes now. So I've got the basic structure of the main parts of the shape of the face, and so the eyes will be added next. And to add the eyes, I do put a little bit of raw clay into the sockets, and the amount of clay that I add is very dependent on my reference. I will use my profile reference to measure how much clay I need to put behind the eye. So at this point, I've put in the eyes. I've used eyes from Virgo's Alchemy. She has a channel on YouTube, and she has tutorials on how to paint them. Once you've molded them in resin, you then paint them. So now I'm adding little pieces of clay around the eyes, so trying to keep the eyes from moving. So they're embedded in some raw clay behind. I've measured to make sure that the width of the raw clay behind in the eye socket doesn't go out too far, it isn't too far back, too far forward, so that the eyeball is in the right place, and that takes measuring against your reference picture, the profile of your reference. So once your eyes are set in a nice place, you're happy with that, then I'm just taking little pieces of clay, little by little, equal parts on either side, and just adding in more clay around inside the socket to just really build up around the eyes. Not too much, because the eyes need to stay out on the surface of the face and not get too embedded. So I'm now looking at the nose, taking a measurement for the nose. It isn't a portrait, but if I've looked at a reference picture and I really like it, then it is quite important that I still measure it, because otherwise I won't get what I'm looking at. If I've wanted that shape and size of nose, then I still need to do the measurements. So that's the reason why I'm still doing them. Same for the mouth, taking a measurement of the mouth and transferring it onto my face. So I'm using some calipers. I just bought them off eBay. They're quite old calipers and they're very stiff, which is good, because you want to take a measurement and have the caliper hold that measurement as you transfer it onto your face, so from the reference face to your face. The tools I'm using are ones I have used since I started sculpting 17 years ago. So they literally are the same tool that I bought. I've got a lot of other tools since then, and one day I should probably do a video on all of my many tools. I have a lot of tools, but I always go back to the ones that I got in the beginning. So for this face, I used a few different references, and none of them were exactly what I wanted, but I took pieces from all of them, and I wanted the mouth to look very pouty. So I had a reference picture for the profile, but then I had a separate reference for the mouth profile. I wanted the bottom lip to be pushed out. Luckily, I did find one, because it's quite difficult when you want this specific expression. I'm just shaping the mouth, bringing the clay forward, moving it around instead of adding more clay, to try and get the right shape around that area of the mouth. Don't want to add too much clay, because I might add too much. So I can try to use the clay that I have there already. So at the moment I'm using my ball tool to just shape. I also have what I call a pointy tool. I have no idea what the real name of it is. It comes in a very cheap packs of nail art brushes. They always have a few pointy tools, so I've ended up with quite a few over the years, and they're very useful. They're a little bit more pointy than a ball tool, so even the smallest ball tool is still not as pointy as the pointy tool. So that's why I call it that. So I just use my ball tool and my other tools as kind of a way of drawing. So I'm just shifting the clay and almost sketching. It's just my way of doing it. Not everyone does it like this. Some people use their fingers, some people use brushes, and it's all depends on your own personal preference. So now I'm building up the eye area. So I'm still using equal amounts of clay on each side and adding it slowly, blending it in, adding some more. Sometimes I add a few bits before I blend in. I want the eyes to be looking up in this because I want her head to be a little bit down. So the expression or the body language is sort of sulky. So I want her head to be sort of looking a bit down, but her eyes looking up. Sometimes it's difficult to know the exact placing of the eyes. So what I try to do, or what I find helpful, is to place the eyes facing forward build them up a little bit, so build a bit of the clay up like I'm doing now, and then adjust them later on. I used to find in the old days that if I put the eyes in facing, say, to the side, for some reason, if I did that from the beginning, for some reason my face would start to slant towards the direction that the eyes were looking. I don't know why. So I tried to keep them facing forward for as long as possible, and then when I get to a point where I know that if I don't move them, it's going to affect what I've sculpted, then I move them. I'm building up the bridge of the nose, blending in those little bits of clay around the eyes, making sure that I don't move the eyes because I've basically got them where I want them to be, trying to sort of set them in rather than move them. But if they're in the skull and they've been pressed into raw clay at the back and in the eye sockets, they pretty much stay where you put them, so it should be all right. So I'm just blending that in. It will need more clay to be added later. So I also have some wooden tools which are quite useful. I find that wooden tools grip the clay a bit more, so if you have a clay that is a bit tough, a bit stiff, you can always add oils to it, which will help make it a bit softer. But you can also use a wooden tool. If you don't, say you like it quite stiff, but you also find it quite difficult to blend in, then wooden tools actually are quite helpful there. So I also want her cheeks to be quite puffy. So she's got a cute, hopefully a cutish look on her face. Cute but angry. So I'm adding equal parts of clay or equal pieces of clay to each side of her face. I'm going to upload this video with no music. I find music quite frustrating sometimes when I'm watching a video, which is just my preference. I'm not a criticism of anyone else who might use music, but I find that if it's music I don't like, but I can't turn it down because I have to wait in case the person's going to speak, then it means you're ending up listening to music that you don't want to listen to, waiting for them to speak again. As it is, I'm speaking a lot in this video, so I probably don't even need music, but would you let me know in the comments below if you prefer to have music in the quiet periods, if there are any quiet periods, or whether you would rather they were just quiet so that you can add your own, you can have your own music playing in the background. I do that for Patreon. I never put music in the quiet areas of my videos for that reason, but I can do the same here if you like the idea. What I have to do now is bring her brows together because she's frowning and she's not happy. So I'm taking the clay. So I built it up the way it as much as clay as what needs to be on the forehead, but now I need to actually pull it down, almost like skin would pull down when you're frowning. So that's what I'm doing. And then once I've got the basics of that, I'm just building more on the eye. Now these eyes are staying as they are, they're looking up, so they don't need to be looking to the side, so I don't need to turn them. But if they were to be turned, then I would be doing that about now. So it really is just adding small pieces of clay, equal parts on each side. So the other thing that I'm always quite aware of is not building too much clay around the eye. The more clay you build around the eyes, the more the potential is that the eye goes deeper and deeper into the head. As you can see on the face, I've made sure that the eyeballs themselves are not sinking into the clay. So I'm keeping a nice shape around the eyeballs so that they stay on the surface of the face. What you can do is go back to your original reference pictures, draw a pencil line that runs down the face and hits the tip of the eye, so where the end of the eye is, so the tip, the front of the eye. It's very difficult to explain, but I do show it in some of my videos. Probably got someone on YouTube where I show it, but I really should probably do a video. So what you can do to make sure that the eye does not sink into the face is keep referring to your reference. especially your profile reference. So you can hold your face against your reference profile, and then you'll be able to see the space between the eyeball and the bridge of the nose, and just keep going back and checking that that doesn't change. So when you're building clay around the eyes, just do it in small pieces, equal parts on either side, and just build very slowly and carefully so that you don't put a lot of clay around the eyes. Again, just keeping the eyes on the surface of the face. I try to keep quite aware of the fact that the side of the eye, so where the eye goes back, it's deep, but there's not a lot of flesh around there, so a lot of the eyeball is still visible. So keeping all of these things in mind when you're sculpting the eye is quite important, so that you can keep the eye on the surface and so it doesn't sink into the face. And now we've moved on a lot, added a lot more clay, made the brows look kind of heavy and drawn and annoyed. And now for the mouth, I'm making sure that the bottom lip is sticking out. So you want it cross-faced, but you want it to stay quite cute as well, if possible. So it's thinking about getting the expression, but keeping the attractiveness of the face or the cuteness of the face. So I guess when you're bringing the clay inward like that from the outside of the face to the mouth, it's almost mimicking what your face would do if you were pulling down or sort of scowling a little bit or looking sulky. So sort of try to move the clay the way maybe your face would move. Making the lips a little bit bigger, because I think the space between the nose and the lips was getting a little bit big. That's a point at which it would be helpful to look at the reference and make sure that you're not going off. And then ball tools are really good for nose, eyes, well, any kind of shadow areas. And there's my pointy tool again, which is really good for, it's almost like a pencil, so you can kind of draw on the clay in a way. In this particular face, you want the lower lip to be much bigger than the upper lip, because that's what helps make it look sulky. Nostrils are complicated as well. Very good to have a front view and a side view for nostrils, because then you can see the shape of the nostril from the side and then also what it looks like from the front, because people have very different shapes of nostrils. Some people's noses don't have that middle section too much, and some people have more of a middle section. So you can get all kinds of different shapes of noses. Everything is similar but different in every different person. Same with pretty much every feature. So the small ball tools are actually really, really good as well for kind of drawing almost. Making sure at the moment that that eye is swooping backwards and a lot of the eyeball is still showing. So even though the eyes aren't super big and the forehead is quite heavy because it's drawing in with the annoyed look, there's still a lot of eyeball showing. And these tools I've made a long time ago from a pen, just embedded in some old clay. And those are also very useful. So I'm still shaping the mouth. Sometimes things take a while to get to that exact expression that you want. And with this one, it really was a battle between getting the expression but also not losing the cuteness of the face. So it took a bit of time. And my wooden tools are just very useful as well. They grip the clay more than the metal ones do, and I think that's why it can be quite helpful. So I'm adding a little bit more clay on the sides, just refining the face. So this is not quite the end of the face, this part of the tutorial. It's just bringing it up to almost complete, but not quite. I really hope you have enjoyed this. And if you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. I'm going to make it my business to check my comments regularly. And I'm really happy to answer any questions you have. If you'd like to see this in more of a real-time sculpt, longer video, you can find that on my Patreon. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you very soon. So this is the home page of my Patreon. If you click into collections, it'll take you to all the collections I have so far. So all of these are complete. This is the one we're working on at the moment, so it's the only one that's not complete. It's got 3 so far, tutorials. Each one of these is an hour long. The first one is about sculpting the face, making the armature for the body, painting the face, and sculpting the hand. The rest of the collections are all complete. For example, Ning feeding the fish. This was a very long tutorial, or it had many parts. So these are all the parts. Each one is an hour, and it ranges all the way through from the beginning to the end of Ning feeding the fish. I have a range of different kinds of figures. So children, there's a fairy hovering above a cup. We've got the free mermaid, the salty mermaid. So all of those are free. So if you follow me on Patreon, even if you're not a member, you should be able to have access to that. There's sculpting a male, some different kinds of things like sculpting the head of Olivia Newton-John, but putting her onto a Barbie body, and then sculpting the clothes in epoxy clay. So that was me figuring out how to do something I was asked to do, but I had to figure out how to do it, and then I just kind of documented how I decided to do it. And there are shorter videos like sculpting a Japanese chair. This one is another experimental one. I sculpted this face from a ball of clay with no reference, which was actually really nice to do, and I wouldn't mind doing another one actually of that. This is a hard profile. Sorry, for a minute I could not think of the word. Using a hard profile to start the face. So that's another method I've used before. A lot of the ones at the bottom, towards the bottom, which are older videos, a lot of these are work in progress. For example, if I go into it, it's not as detailed, so it's not got as many parts to it, because it really is just more of a summary of creating that figure. So those are the older videos. All of the ones near the top down here, all of these ones are all detailed hour-long parts which go over many months. So that's kind of how I changed the way I did things as I carried on with Patreon, so that now it's more of an in-depth tutorials. But there are also quite a few shorter tutorials on how to sculpt shoes, making roses, simple things like maybe figuring out how to bake. Those are kind of things that were quite scary in the beginning when I started, but once you know what to do, it becomes much easier. So all of these are just work in progress, scattered amongst armature tutorials. So there's basics. So there's things for beginners, and then there's things for more advanced as well. My Q&A section, that's a really good one, because it has also accumulated over time with people asking me questions. So then I would just make videos every now and then on questions I'd been asked. If you go there and you don't find what you're looking for, there's a question that hasn't been answered, please ask me, because that's good for me as well, because it'll give me ideas on things I can talk about. If it needs a video, I can do a video on it. Otherwise, I can just answer your questions. So if you go to the video that you want to ask a question on, then just ask it underneath in the comments. And I always see them. I'm there quite often, so I will see them. So that is the full extent of my collection of videos so far. It's growing all the time. And yeah, I would love to see you there. And if you want to join, that's wonderful. If you just want to follow me there, that's really great too. Come and go as you please. Don't feel like once you've joined you have to stay. You can come and go, treat it like a library, check in, check out whenever you want to, and ask me questions, because I'm always happy to answer anything that you have to ask. Also, ask on YouTube if you want to. That's great. I'm going to try to be much more active there and answer any questions. So thank you so much for watching this. And I hope to see you there. Otherwise, I will see you in YouTube. And happy sculpting. See you soon.